all those courses, that the best part about it is that it's been cutting edge because, like again, with the Log4j example, I mean, there's still a lot of concern out there, even though there's been like 2 or 3 patch cycles where they've, hey, upgraded 2.15. Nope. Upgraded 2.16. Nope. Upgraded 2.17, like et cetera, et cetera. It's important because, there are teams that might not be able to patch. Like, so then what do they do? Are there compensating controls that we can use? Are there, Java, variables that we can declare in the command line that might protect the system, et cetera, et cetera. And then even further, like, why is this an issue, right? So all those things taken into consideration, and then having the ability to exploit it in a lab, like we do with the courses, it's fun creating the lab, right? It's fun setting up the kind of shooting gallery for the student and then kind of walking them through what's happening. So, I just think they're really fun courses. But for me, the most fun part of it is it's something that's commensurate to what's going on in the industry. I mean, even the older ones, and I say older, but like InstallerFileTakeOver or the MS HTML one, like I'm positive there's still systems out there that are vulnerable to it, or it's applicable in some capacity.
Hello, and welcome to the Cybrary podcast. I'm Jenn Barnabee. I'm one of the course managers here at Cybrary. And today I'm so excited to welcome one of our technical subject matter experts and instructors, Matt Mullins.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Matt has led multiple red team engagements ranging from a few weeks to a year, covering multiple security domains and industries like medical, financial, and government. And outside of red teaming, Matt is also a seasoned penetration tester with interests in AppSec, OSINT, hardware, Wi-Fi, social engineering, and physical security. Matt has a master's degree in information assurance and an exhaustive number of certifications, ranging from frameworks, management, and hands-on hacking. And like I said, Matt is a technical SME for us at Cybrary, and he focuses on adversarial emulation and red teaming for course content. Yeah. So we're so excited to have you. I've been looking forward to this, and we love having our instructors on, give our learners a chance to get to know you guys, beyond just the course content. So I wanted to ask you, how you got your start in the industry and, what your early roles were and everything like that.
Yeah. So I've always kind of had an interest in hacking and red teaming. When I was a kid, I was interested in a lot of things related to this. My first experiences with a PC, I was one of those kids that took everything apart, trying to modify save game files and things like that. So the interest was there, and as I got older, the interest in technology kind of took me towards the help desk farm / help desk queue. After doing that for a bit, I did get to upgrade towards an incident management role where basically we were the voice network firefighters. If there was an issue, we would dump router logs or router configs, open up general incident management bridges or gem bridges, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I kind of figured out that I wanted to do something security related as I got into IT, and so as a result of that, there was a course that was available at Capital One that was offered to us. It was a kind of a how to hack class. And someone really helped me kickstart my career, Ty Sabano, who I think is the current CISO or CISO for Cysense, which is a San Francisco. I don't know if they're a startup. I think they're publicly traded now, but a pretty cool company in regards to data analysis and security. He gave me that opportunity. He was teaching the class. I came in and my mind was blown. I was like, this is the coolest stuff ever. And of course, I knew nothing. So I was starting from total ground zero. And, as I went through it, I asked him, I was like, hey, this is really cool. If there's any chance in the future for me to be able to join your team, I'd love to. I'm currently studying for, my CEH, et cetera, et cetera. And, he gave me that opportunity and he afforded me the capability once I completed the class to, go through the interview process and see how much I truly knew. And if there was anything that they could work with, kind of thinking about like a block of clay. Can we mold this into something or is it a little too dried out already? And so, they took it upon themselves to take me under their wing and I joined their team. And from there, I went from, application security and pen testing to, doing some other application security stuff like control review and some code review and things like that. But I was really interested in the hands-on hacking. And, from there, I went to a number of different positions, and eventually made my way towards red teaming. And, red teaming has really been something I found a lot of joy with. Like you had said earlier, there's a lot of random stuff as you were kind of going through, like, oh, you OSINT and hardware and, advanced adversarial dog walking and things like that. So it's such a wide umbrella of skills that you can use, because really it's just wide open, right? Whereas a pen test, you have 1 week. With red teaming, if you're in a really good continuous environment or annual environment, it's really how are we going to get in and meet our objective. And so, that's really how it started. There's a lot of work that was done, and I'm definitely not a special case where I was a genius or I was gifted or anything like that. It was a lot of stuff where I just would walk in and be like, all right. Like the John Travolta gif that everybody sees where he's like looking left and looking right, like from Pulp Fiction. That's pretty much how I felt through the majority of the beginning of my career. And, I think it's something that can be a little bit of a testimony that, even if you aren't the best at it, if you keep practicing and you keep studying and you keep going, you'll get there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, just to think that you started out help desk and eventually got into something where you realized there was like a whole security angle. You'd been taking things apart and figuring out your way around things and games and stuff like that is like almost hobby, fun thing to do. And then realized later on there's like a whole industry and career field around that. So that's really great. Did you originally study this in school, or did you, kind of start in a different area and then move into sort of the security InfoSec kind of area?
Yeah, I definitely started in a different field. My bachelor's is in religious studies. My interest was in Buddhism and Hinduism.
Wow.
That's kind of a hard pivot. Another gift to reference is, the Seinfeld one where they're trying to get the sofa up the stairs and they're like, pivot. It was a hard pivot. But, when I got in and I started doing, the standard help desk stuff, and then going into incident management, really realizing, hey, I want to double down on this. I think this is something that's really cool. I did a lot of research on the field when I was on the phones. It's like, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What sounds like a cool job,
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen, hackers in movies and things like that. It's just something that really sparks the imagination and has captured a lot of attention recently, especially, in the last decade. And so, just thinking about it, be like, yep, let's go for this and keep going. Even if I fail an exam for a certification, or, I didn't do too great on a grad course for encryption or something like that initially, keep going, keep practicing, keep learning. So.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You're mentioning, Buddhism and everything. And I did a little snooping on your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you studied Chinese as well. Was that part of that interest there? Or was it just you were interested in that language or whatever?
It was a little bit of both. I got a really good friend that I grew up with, Mr. Jason Jones, and he and I had a strong interest in Japanese and Korean culture. He's
Mm-hmm.
Korean, and
Okay.
when we were going towards the end of our 4-year degrees, like, man, we should do a study abroad. Like, what's a cool study abroad we could do? And he's like, let's go to China, man. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so there's tons of cool Buddhist temples that we got to visit. There's
Uh-huh.
tons of great culture, great food. And then obviously having some exposure to Chinese culture and exposure to just being in China for a couple
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm.
It makes for a curious perspective in regards to the current landscape with information security.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it was a little bit of those interests, but it was, it was an adventure too, because I personally don't know many people who have been there. A
Yeah.
lot of people have been abroad in some capacity, but it's been kind of a unique identifier for myself to be able to, oh yeah, I studied at BY, at BFSU, Beijing Foreign Studies University.
Uh-huh.
We ran up Mount Tai, with one of the guys in the crew team at VCU, and just
Uh-huh.
fun stories, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. A developer I used to work with, I think his wife is Chinese, and he ended up doing he and I were both into endurance sports and stuff like that. So he talked a lot about that. And he ended up doing the Great Wall of China Marathon or something and
Oh
got to go
wow.
over there. And that was really cool to hear about that. So I can really relate to that. But well, that's really cool. I mean, and also, you mentioned the gentleman that got you that job as basically a penetration tester, right? And so I mean, I think everybody kind of thinks of those people that were mentors or gave them their break or whatever, and so that's really cool that you kind of attribute it to that. And I wonder if you kind of mentioned you maybe you weren't always the best, but you just kept going. And, what kind of situations did you have where you it kind of felt like imposter syndrome maybe and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. That happens a lot. Like the first pen test that I was on, you get there, you have Burp Suite set up, you're proxying things, and you're like, and you look around and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I guess I'll look for a cross-site scripting script alert script. Like, I guess we'll see what happens. But I think that this field also is a field that a lot of people, if you're in a good environment with a good team, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the little asterisks, like, all sales final or whatever attached to the end of it. But if you're with a good team, there's going to be a desire to want to share, and there's going to be a desire to want to improve the team and build them up. I had the former team that I was on with the Federal Reserve for their red team. There was a guy, Stephen Thomas, who was just like that. Mm-hmm. Incredibly intelligent, super talented hacker. And, he really fostered growth and really shared. And so, there's going to be a lot of points, I think, that if you're being honest with yourself, in my opinion, I mean, maybe there's some people out there who are just amazing. They're like the Luke Skywalker of hacking, but I'm definitely not that. And so, being able to say like, hey, is anybody a pro with like hardware? Is anybody a pro with Wi-Fi, And that's how you learn, right? So there's definitely, but your point about imposter syndrome is something that I've definitely grappled with. And I think that it's probably, as you get further along in the career field, it's pretty ubiquitous with it because, there's going to be a point where you're like, wait, what? Like, why are they trusting me with this much knowledge? Or like, I don't know anything about this system. I just found a SQL injection, et cetera, et cetera. But, the fact that you're there kind of like, making the donuts per se, or you're churning out the widgets, like you're going to get better. And hopefully, it won't go away entirely, but it'll go away to a degree because, you'll find that, at least I've found that even if you might not feel like initially you're an expert in something, like a good example of that might be social engineering. And, you call enough people and ask them for passwords that eventually be like, I mean, I'm not like the best, but I'm not afraid to call somebody or walk up and be like, hey, I can't help but notice that you've got a t-shirt that says you work for, Robinhood, trading platform or whatever. Like, do you work there? Et cetera, et cetera. Like you get more comfortable with it. So it doesn't go away, but it gets better.
Yeah. Maybe you learn strategies of how to, when you get to those points where you're unsure, you have strategies for dealing with that. And if I just ask these questions, I'll, not in the social engineering, but of the people I work with, I'll get to a different, step further or something maybe. So yeah, that's really cool. I want to get to some of the courses that you've taught for us. You've done some of the most cutting edge courses that we have, and covering recent vulnerabilities that have come out, and you show people how to exploit it and then how to mitigate it. So you kind of have both sides of the coin. And you've done a HiveNightmare course, InstallerFileTakeOver, the MS-HTML vulnerability, and we just released the Log4j vulnerability course that you did with Clint Care, which is so exciting. I know it's everybody's heard about it and everything, but I wonder what you think about those courses that you've done like that on the vulnerabilities, and what you like about doing those courses.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, the fact that they're cutting edge and the knowledge is like important. It's at the forefront. SOC teams could use it like right now. Pen testers could use it. Red teamers could use it right now. That's probably one of my favorite parts about it. The other thing is with Log4j. I mean, Clint is amazing, super smart, stellar dude. So obviously, any chance I get to work with him, I'm going to be like, of course. So it's nice to have even if it's a course that is cutting edge and, I feel pretty confident in it. It's always good to have a battle buddy to kind of bounce ideas off of. And so super appreciative of Clint, providing that and doing what he did. But I think that in general, all those courses, that the best part about it is that it's been cutting edge because, like again, with the Log4j example, I mean, there's still a lot of concern out there, even though there's been like 2 or 3 patch cycles where they've, hey, upgraded 2.15. Nope. Upgraded 2.16. Nope. Upgraded 2.17, like et cetera, et cetera. It's important because, there are teams that might not be able to patch. Like, so then what do? Are there compensating controls that we can use? Are there, Java, variables that we can declare in the command line that might protect the system, et cetera, et cetera? And then even further, like, why is this an issue, right? So all those things taken into consideration, and then having the ability to exploit it in a lab like we do with the courses. It's fun creating the lab, right? It's fun setting up the kind of shooting gallery for the student and then kind of walking them through what's happening. So, I just think they're really fun courses. But for me, the most fun part of it is it's something that's commensurate to what's going on in the industry. I mean, even the older ones, and I say older, but like InstallerFileTakeOver or the MS HTML one, like I'm positive there's still systems out there that are vulnerable to it, or it's applicable in some capacity. I mean, look how long it took for Eternal Blue to go away. I mean, I would argue there's probably some systems out there that still are legacy and are vulnerable to Eternal Blue. So, it's good knowledge to have, and having the ability to kind of walk through, hey, like these declarations or imports in the Java code, or, these aspects in the Windows system are what makes it vulnerable. Misconfigurations are everywhere. So, but they were very fun courses to make too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're so fortunate because we have you guys do these courses, but you're part-time for us, but you're out there in the trenches at real companies, real, in the government and other places. We have people all across the spectrum in the trenches. And so you come to us and say, hey, this just happened. Everybody's dealing with it. We should do a course on it. And it's really exciting. And, just we feel like we're giving our learners a real life situation to learn from. So I think that's always really awesome. And we're also been starting to roll out our MITRE TTP courses. So these are courses that focus on the MITRE attack framework and specific tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, and how to detect them and mitigate them. And you did our first prototype course for the SSH authorized keys. It's not a prototype anymore, but when we started it out, and you're going to be working with one of our defensive SMEs, defenders, on these courses. And, you guys will be working together to show how to detect these things and mitigate them. And you'll be kind of the adversary in the background doing the stuff. And then they're going to be showing how to detect it, which is going to be really cool. What do you think that both offensive and defensive practitioners can gain from these courses?
Sure. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to be gained personally. The fact that, you can, from the defensive side, understand what the adversary is going to be doing. And then from the adversarial side, understanding what the defender is going to be looking for. Not to reuse an analogy, but, the shield that blocks can also bash. The sword that strikes can also parry or riposte or whatever. And so having that flexibility of knowledge is really crucial, I think, especially if you are on the edge of defending enterprise organizations. I mean, willing and truly, the blue team, they're the real champions. They're the real heroes. The red team is there to train the blue team. If the red team is constantly beating up the blue team, then that's a problem, right? Because it's not commensurate so that the team can grow. And maybe you're emulating somebody who's too advanced, right, to build up. The blue team should never be fully dogged by the red team. But on the same hand, if the blue team is constantly shutting down the red team, they're not learning anything, right? So it's a coevolution, wolves and deer per se, right? The fastest wolf catches the deer, then the deer get faster, and then the slowest wolf, doesn't quite make it. So it's important to have both sides of that perspective and to understand both sides of the coin. And so I think there's a lot that they can learn from that. Again, the detection's in place, right? If you're an adversary emulation, expert or specialist, or you're just, working with some contractors that are running something, understanding, what they might be running against or what you might be running against. Case in point, audit, right? Good audit rules, they're going to see what's going on in the box. So how do you blend in, or how do you move around that? Same with Sysmon, right? They might be using EDR or something like that. What are they hooking in regards to memory? I mean, there's things to learn, and you can learn those things usually from seeing how the blue team detected what you did. And then vice versa with the blue team. Hey, the attacker's flow is this, but if there's a deviation from this one tactic that you normally use, or this one technique, we know they're going to use phishing. But they might not always use, for example, like reflective DLL injection. Maybe for some reason they're choosing PowerShell because they have an idea that they can just run a PowerShell encoded command, and there's a blind spot there. So there's a lot to be learned, I think, and I think that that's the crux of true network defense as we stand in in 2022. Computer network exploitation is definitely something that's on everybody's mind, and we see a lot of with ransomware and things like that. So I think that both parties can learn from it, And I think that it's a nice deviation from an exploit course, right? To show kind of what things would look like on the wire.
Yeah, I mean, I love your analogy with the sword and the shield and everything. That's really cool. And yeah, we're really hoping that, I mean, you guys are going to feed off of each other, putting the courses together, and then we hope those same, different sides out there also get something out of the courses. So really excited to see where that goes, and it'll be really cool. Yeah, so I wanted to get some fun questions in here before you run out of time. So, does everyone in your family consider you the IT guy?
Oh yeah, it's unfortunately once they know you know how to operate computer, you are branded as computer person. My mom asks me a lot of questions constantly. It's kind of a fun thing because we'll be talking and then like hang up and then like 15 minutes later, hey, I've got a question about my browser, or I just got this Mac. How do I do X? And you're like, okay, let's walk through this.
Yeah.
Is it the Wi-Fi or is it like blah, 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 or whatever, so you go through all of those processes and all of those things. But the nice part is that it's kind of reflective of, hey, people, you're the go-to person for it, right?
Yeah.
So you'll always have a conversation topic, I guess.
But you also help your family hack things too, right? Because you were telling me the other day about RFID tags and like reusing them and stuff.
Yep, that's exactly right. If there's like a piece of technology, like for example, a kid's toy, I think that like there's a lot of I think they're MyFair tags, but some of they're real popular, like they're games with like a little portal and they can put the toy on the portal. I was like, well, if it's just reading the tag, maybe we could clone it, and then you go out and you get your Proxmark and you clone it and you're like, okay, cool. Maybe there's another, maybe we could, find another tag somehow, and then copy that. And then even though we don't have the figurine for the kids, we could be like, hey, you could be, whatever character. So there's always little things that, like you said, your family's like, hey, can you do this? I don't know. Can I do that? Let's see.
Be my help desk person and my hacker so I can hack my life. No, that's awesome. So also I wanted to ask you about any TV shows or movies that either accurately or ridiculously inaccurately show what you do.
Yeah. This is a good one. So most accurate, Mr. Robot. The guy that I know somebody personally who owns Hacker Warehouse, who was a consultant for them in their TV series and like making it more realistic. So I think Mr. Robot, cool, as most people would say, is probably the best example of it, especially like some of the earlier episodes and then later episodes too. They do some cool stuff. The least accurate, I would probably say, I want to say it's like CSI. I don't know. I think maybe it was Miami, but there's a dueling keyboard hacking scene where like essentially one of the technicians is hacking and she's like, oh, I can't keep up. They're hacking too fast. And then like this other guy comes over and goes, let me help. And then they're typing on the same keyboard at the same time. Like
that's gotta be the worst.
Yeah, it's like gosh. That. Exactly. Just and then maybe someone could just get like a USB splitter and plug in another keyboard. You could add two more people. And then you could have quadra hacking, like quad damage. Like, okay, no, it's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch some of the earlier episodes of Mr. Robot though, because you're the second person I've heard say how realistic it is. I have to go check that out for sure. Cause I'm sure when I saw it, I wasn't paying attention to I wasn't even thinking anything was real. So I was like not even paying attention to that. But now I'm going to be like, hey, I should pay attention to this. So, okay, last of the fun questions. How intense is your home network setup?
So my home network setup is probably not as exciting as most of my peers. My wife kind of hates my home network setup because I'm like, hey, let me just build this application or / device or whatever on a Raspberry Pi, and we'll just plug it into the network and then route a bunch of traffic through it. And Raspberry Pis aren't exactly built for intense duress, like they're more like a hobbyist thing. So, I've got one of them on a network tap, like a throwing star. And it's like, okay, so now I can see what, is being called before it even hits my Raspberry Pi Pi hole, right? And then I've got like, all the other stuff going on in the background. And it's like, I look over at it now, it's like a Frankenstein of like glowing, like blinky lights and like wires everywhere. And I see some of my peers and they're like, oh, well, I have, a Dream Machine, and the Dream Machine is in a nice server case. The server case is mounted. All the wires are meticulously maintained. There's also some LED cables, so it has a nice cool glow. And I'm like, that's not me, buddy. Like, I'm all like, let's see. Let me just plug this bad boy together, and didn't get a shock. Not electrocuted. That's a great sign.
Wires everywhere. Yeah.
It's It's a little bit of a dumpster fire, but hey, it gets the job done. And with little gremlins, like it's kind of hard to like take the time to be like, all right, I'm going to go make this better. But sometimes you have to carve time. Like case in point, your Raspberry Pi is blocking your podcast connection.
Yes, we didn't have that happen. No.
Yep.
Here we're thinking, oh, Matt's not going to have any technical problems doing this podcast. We run into all
Then
this
something
like,
breaks.
why don't you have this hooked up? No, that's great. Well, cool. Well, like I said, I was so happy to have you on the podcast. You make everything fun. It's always so much fun to work with you. We deal with serious things, serious, vulnerabilities and, sort of under pressure a lot. We got to get this course done and get out. And, we're working like part-time after hours and all that, but you always have so much humor and, you just make it enjoyable. So I want to thank you for that. And I look forward to doing more courses with you. And I don't really do them. So everybody knows I just kind of help get them out there. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I hope we have you back. And maybe next time I'll be in the actual studio and we won't have so much COVID stuff going on again. And we can do it again.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. And like you said, I mean, as a course manager, it's great working with you and excited about the courses that we'll have in the future. So again, thanks for having me on and appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Well, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you all join us next time on the Cybrary podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And we'll see you next time.
Take care.